Greetings and welcome to the Happy O'Clock Radio Show. Our objective is to share testimonies, offer inspiration, and pray for our listeners. We do this with an expectation that you will realize miracles and manifestations of the power of the Holy Spirit. I would like to start out by thanking Kingdom Purpose Radio for allowing us to broadcast Happy O'Clock. Kingdom Purpose TV and Radio is a 24/7 Christian broadcasting network dedicated to providing a platform for kingdom minded ministries to share the gospel with the world. This is a phenomenal ministry, and we are so proud to be a part of it. I would like to also thank the founders of the Zane K. Couture International Institute of Pneumatology, Zane Pierre and Couture Bartholomew. We appreciate your confidence in our Happy O'Clock radio show that was birthed from our training in your institute. My name is Patti Sutton. I'm also known as Happy, and I am your host tonight. I'm from Valdosta, Georgia, and one of the inspirational master mentors of the Institute. Co hosting with me tonight is another inspirational master mentor of the Institute, Loretta Finley. How are you tonight, Loretta? Would you like to say hello?
Sure. How are you and everyone else out there? I'm doing great. I have had a good day and it's a beautiful day, beautiful week. And I'm just looking forward to hearing Hannah tonight. I know she has a lot of good things to say.
Well, on that note, our special guest tonight is Hannah Johnson. She's from Georgia. She's a Georgia girl too, and we're all Southern belles. We're neighboring states, Alabama
Yeah,
and Georgia. Here we're picking up the Southern vibe, and
I forgot to say I'm from Southern Alabama.
yes, ma'am. But
Lower Alabama.
but anyway, Hannah, she's been our special guest two or three times before. We love having her on. She has we have always have great discussion, and we always feel inspired by her. So Hannah, welcome. Hannah is a marriage and relationship coach on top of the other things that she does. But tonight in particular, she's going to share her testimony of the Lord taking her family from one particular lifestyle to another. That should pique your interest, I would hope. But anyway, how are you
Yeah,
tonight, Hannah?
I'm doing great. We just got back from the beach and I drove home today, so I was happy to be on tonight because I was excited to talk about this subject.
All right. I didn't know you were at the beach. I would have been jealous.
Yeah,
I love going to the beach.
me too.
It's so relaxing. Did you have a great time?
It was wonderful. Yes.
That's good. Well, so go ahead and tell us your story, your about your family,
Okay.
where you're from, and whatever you want to tell us about what's happened here.
Okay. So, um, yeah, my name's Hannah Johnson, and I am a marriage life coach and relationship coach, but also I have a lot of other things I do. But I have three children. My daughter's 23, my son's 17, and then my other son is 6. And I've been married 19 years, and to my husband Eric. And so I guess let's see, how I would kind of go into starting talking about our story is basically we went from living in the suburbs of Atlanta, and you could say the city, because it was, Walmart within walking distance of my house, and every store you can think of. We had a Hobby Lobby, uh, in the same parking lot as a Walmart, and had every convenience you could imagine, within 20 minutes of our house probably. And now we live in, I would say, like, I call it the middle of nowhere because we live 20 minutes from town where the grocery store is. We have a gas station in our neighborhood, or, it's about 10 minutes away, the gas station and the Dollar General. And we have a complete different lifestyle, but we chose it. And I was going to tell the story about how that kind of happened and just how God worked in our life. So this was the November before 2020, so 2019 November, and I started watching these YouTube videos. I'm a YouTube fanatic because I learn visually, and so I learn a lot from YouTube, watching people do things, watching people create things or fix stuff. So all of a sudden, I started. Now, at the time, I was in Zane and Kelly's Facebook group and learning from Zane and Kelly in different ways about the West, not the Western point of view, but the Hebrew point of view of the Bible. So I start watching these videos about homesteading. And at the time, I had some experience with gardening, but mainly like flowers and stuff, and like perennials, I would call it. So, and I know y'all ladies know what that is.
Yeah.
Hydrangeas and all that. And so I grew up, my mom always liked to do that. But my mom and dad were from up north. My mom was a city girl and barely knew how to cook when she got married and had 7 children. And she learned how to cook, but she never really had that country life, or that life where we ate a lot of like microwave stuff and quick meals when we were growing up, and we really did not live off the land at all. Okay, we didn't know how. That was not a even something in my thinking. We didn't hunt. We went fishing for fun with my dad, but that was it. So um, now I will say I'm married to a hunter, so he is big into hunting deer and wild boar. And so we started several years back processing our own deer meat, and so we would have meat throughout the year. Now this was before the meat prices were so high, and really before we knew anything about like the quality of our meat or anything like that. We just did it because it saved money, and I don't know, because it's the best way to use a deer if you hunt it right. So we were doing that for years and years before we even started homesteading or thinking about homesteading. So it was November of 2019, and you know, COVID was coming. Say, was that March? Well, I didn't have any idea, and I start watching these videos about homesteading, and I got passionate about it. And basically, homesteading is where you go back to your what they call your roots. You go back to the way things were 80 or 100 years ago, and actually in the country, it was not that far off. It was not that long ago. They were eating this way, living this way, but it's where you can your food, you grow your food, you the meat you eat is a cow that you have on your property, you feed it and you butcher it and you eat that meat all year round. Like your family learns to basically from their parents and their parents how to take care of themselves, and
Yeah,
they
kinda
don't
like
need a
in the garden,
grocery
right?
store.
It's like you're going back
Yes,
to the garden.
yes, it exactly. And well, really that's what it is too, is in the Old Testament and all the promises. If you read the promises in the Bible, which that's our covenant, right, that we're in today,
Absolutely.
then half the promises are about your stock of animals reproducing and being, um, healthy, and then your vegetables and your fields producing weed and all this stuff, right? That's the blessing that God gave them. Well, that's because for all of time, people have had to provide, like, grow their own food, and that's the way that they've been wealthy,
Yeah,
really.
right, yeah.
Right.
And that's
So,
what they would, the people would tithe off of their
yeah.
produce, is that what you call it? Or their gardening?
Well,
Would you say that?
people would do, yeah, they would do that, I believe. I definitely, well, we know the story, the original story of tithing with the meat, but that's the thing is, if you had a flock of sheep, or like sheep, you had cows, you had goats, you had different things, and that's where you would get all the meat that you lived off of. You never even heard of a grocery store, and really grocery stores didn't exist until, I don't know the year, but it was between the 20s and 40s. of, 1900s. All right. So you think about that. Before that time, people didn't go to the store to get everything they need like they do now. Everything we need, we go buy at the store. So most human beings, I mean, not, say it's not, it's like there's plenty of countries in the world that don't live the way we do in America. But
Yeah,
most Americans, if not all Americans, live off like they just buy what they want, right? And they
right.
don't know where it came from or how it was made. And if they had to make it themselves, they would be lost because they don't know where to begin. So I start watching these videos, I get obsessed with them. Okay. I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to be a homesteader. Like, this is amazing. This is an amazing lifestyle. And also, now I will say, my husband was in a job where he was working as a branch manager of a store. He had 9 employees, and he was making a lot of money at this job. And we were not really happy because he was so stressed that his stress level was through the roof, and he was giving all of his time to this job because even when he was home, he was thinking about work. And we had never experienced that in our marriage until he got that job because it was such a lot of responsibility
Yeah,
and high demand, right? So it was really like, for me, it was like costing us more than it was worth, the money, right? Now, um that, so in my heart, what I wanted, it was my husband to have freedom from that. Like, I felt like, why, I don't think this is what he needs to be doing forever. I just, that it's not, and that's the way my father raised me too, is to not, in a sense, be tied to a system that's not in your favor. That if you died, they'd replace you the next day. And if it was from stress, right? So we want to live, we want to live in a healthy, responsible way, but the homesteading life is a way where you get to choose who you work for, and you get to choose where you get the things that you need every day, right?
yeah. There's
And
so much to be said for having that freedom, right?
absolutely, yeah. And I mean, some people, maybe they've never thought of it, but I watched this one video, and then I'll go on to the rest part of the story. I watched
Okay.
this one video, and it was about this homesteading family that lived in California. They were talking about getting divorced, and they were just at a brink of a divorce because her husband was kind of like mine. It was the same thing. They barely saw each other. They were just super stressed, and they had 4 sons, and they were just like, "What are we going to do? We can't do this." And so they decided, instead of getting divorced, let's do something crazy. Let's sell our house. Let's take the money. Let's buy an RV. Now, we would never do this. This is crazy, but this is what they did. They bought an RV, and they took the rest of the money and put it away, and then they drove across the country with their 4 kids, and they found property, land to buy in a state they chose, and then they moved there and they became homesteaders there. But they spent a whole year on the road. In that video, that man said, at one point, he said, "I realized that I was a hard worker, and I'm always going to be a hard worker. But who am I going to work for? Myself and my family, or a big company?"
Good point.
And when he said that, it was like God Himself spoke to me,
Mm.
because I thought, my husband's a hard worker too, and he loves to work.
Works
But what if
himself
he
to
was working
death,
for
right?
us? Yes, he does. What if he was working for us, like our family? And what if we benefited from that hard work in more ways than just money, right?
Yeah.
Because we were spending a lot of that money going out to eat and trying to deal with the stress, right? so so fast forward, COVID came, and at that point my husband said to me, when I was like, "Let's move, let's get some land, let's become homesteaders," like, because I'm a dreamer. And he was like, "Hannah, if you show me that you can do this, and you spend at least a season or two doing it, then I'll consider it, because I don't want you just get this, like, idea to do this, and then never ever really, you don't really like it because it's hard work, right? And I
Right.
was like, okay, well, I'll do it. So I started right away. We started, it's called Back to Eden gardening, where, you'd have to look
How
that up, but look
interesting
it
it's
up.
called that.
Yes. And that was my first thing I learned that first about gardening and how to keep the weeds down and how to moisture, like keep the plants moisture, have moisture under the soil and all this stuff. And I learned all that from YouTube. So we started doing that year. Well, then COVID came, and then my husband went through probably the most stressful year of his work because of COVID and all the shortages and all the shutdown and this and that. And he never left. He didn't miss one day of work. That he was an essential worker, and so he he went through a lot of stress during the whole year and a half really of COVID and everything. Well, so we went through all that. Well, then the next winter, so we had the best garden we've ever had because he had gardens for years, but I wasn't that interested in it, and he had stopped since he started working. Well, I did the garden that year, and I had their help a little bit, but my teenager and me pretty much we did it, and it was the most beautiful garden on our little 3/4 acre yard. And we had vegetables, we had butternut squash, we had tomatoes, we had everything, and some
That's
flowers.
awesome.
I've always loved flowers. It was awesome and it was beautiful. And we have a lot of pictures of it. And I was so proud of myself. And
Oh,
but
yeah.
it was like a when you grow vegetables and fruit, you really get to know who God is.
Yeah,
Really,
because
because
you're exercising who you are in him as a creator.
yes. And really about his thoughtfulness. Okay? Because when I look at a tiny little seed and I plant that seed into the ground, and then I know this seed is going to produce food for me for the next year. It's not only just going to produce one thing, it's going to produce lots of fruit, right? Like a
Right.
tomato plant. And I'm going to have enough tomatoes on that plant to share with people because I'm going to have so many tomatoes. Now, and I mean, that's like a miracle within itself. Now, flowers have always spoke to me. I always feel like God speaks to me through flowers. And that's just like a whole nother level because he's shown me so many times about just a lot of things. But one thing is like all the differentiation between flowers and the uniqueness of them. And he's
Mhm.
shown me like this is the way I feel about my human people. All my people, they're so beautiful, but they're so unique, and they all have their own giftings and talents. And when I look at flowers, that's what I always think of.
Hmm.
Yeah. So, oh, so we went through all that. Now, this is when the housing market's going, really high. Now we bought our house, and I won't say numbers, but we bought our house back in 2008 when the economy crashed, and we had never bought a house, and so we got it for really cheap. Okay, now we remodeled it at one point because we had some equity in the house, so we got a new kitchen and stuff. So when it was time where I kept on saying, when can we move and buy land? We wanted to move down to where his family's from, and also where we've always hunted, and he just kept saying no because he was like, it's not time. And he kept saying, well, I don't think we can make enough money to afford it and all this. And so now this fast forward to the winter of the next year. So it was 2021 January, and we're on our way home from the hunting club, and we had such a nice time. My husband hunts every weekend during hunting season, and he always has the whole time I've known him. And
Yeah.
so that means he's gone a lot during hunting season, and that was always hard on me. Um, Especially when I had babies. So, all right. So we're in the car and we're driving home, and this is
Oh,
how
you're in and out.
about
You're
now?
now you're good. So go
Okay,
back at
I
least
shot
2
forward.
sentences.
Okay. So yeah, I said my husband is a hunter, so he hunted every weekend for 3 months out of the year because he's like one of those fanatical deer hunters. So he was gone a lot during hunting season, and if he was gone, then I'd have to go with him if I wanted to spend time with him, right?
Yeah.
So I learned to go hunt with him and everything. Well, so I was like, we were on our way home from a hunting trip, and I was saying to him, like, I really love to just consider moving soon. Like, why don't we start looking for property? And he said, no, no, I don't think we can. It's not time. But see, that's one thing, when you're married, you know your spouse pretty well. And I knew, okay, here he's just doing this is more kind of more like pessimism. And I don't think this is possible because that's kind of his
Mhm,
personality.
mhm,
and, and
uh-huh.
I said, okay, well, I know we can, and I know we can sell our house. I said, how much do you think our house is worth right now? And so he tells me some number, like, so I'll say $220,000. And I said, well, I can guarantee you right now it's worth at least like 275, if not more. And
So
he
you told him
goes,
higher.
yeah, because
Because
he
you
was worried about making enough money to buy like pay cash for something,
right,
because
yeah.
you can buy it depending on where you move, you can buy land and property in the country where there's not a lot of jobs compared to the city for way less. So you can
Oh,
move out
yeah.
of a yeah, you can move out of a little house on half an acre if for, maybe you paid 300,000, and then you can turn around and spend that 200, 300,000 on, 20 acres somewhere with a house. Um so that was kind of our dream because I told him like we can retire there, like, and maybe you could even leave your job. So
You made
this
it
was
sound
our
really attractive.
yeah, I know.
If you're
It's
gonna
pretty
dream,
cool.
do it up, girl.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
So we so he said, no, I don't think so. Our house is not worth that much. So I said, okay. Now this is one thing Zane taught me was when it comes to your life, okay, and I'm not going to say it exactly correctly. Y'all can paraphrase this for me or change it if you want or add to it. When it comes to your life and the way God designed us, it's important to research things and to get educated on those things to really, if especially if God leads you towards something, it's extremely important to educate yourself. That is something that the Jews have always found valuable. And that's the Hebrew way is education and learning, right? And so if you want to learn, if you want to better your life financially, you learn financial rules and principles, right? And, and when I learned that from him, I've pursued that in so many different ways. And one of the ways was with this, selling of the house and everything, right?
Yeah.
So, so I went home that week and I called a realtor and I said, I need you to come to my house and tell me how much you would put this house on the market for. And so he came over. Well, then I came back to my husband. I said, all right, well, so you remember how you told me what you thought the house was worth? He said, yes. And I said, well, this is what the realtor told me they would put this house on the market for like this week. It was like 285 instead of 225, right?
Mm, yeah.
And he was like, really? And I was like, yeah, this is right now. Now, thankfully, the market continued to rise. Okay.
The
So we
timing was
finally,
right.
yes. So we put the house on the market. Now we had to do a lot of work, right? Like,
Mhm.
that's one thing. Another thing I learned from Zane is a lot of the time Christianity, and this is the way I was raised as a young person, is do a lot of praying and talking about it, asking other people for praying to pray for
Uh,
you, but don't do you might not have to do a lot, and then eventually God will just do it. But see, what I've been taught now is that yeah, you want to pray, yeah, you want to make declarations, you want to pray, you want to do all that, but also we are given everything we need to like put this into action and have this happen in our life. And if we have something we want, follow the principles of it, and you can make it happen. And so without that teaching, I probably wouldn't have been able to do it the way that I did.
that's a great teaching.
it's amazing, and it's helped me in so many areas of my life,
Yeah.
not just the and it honestly, you can apply it to marriage too, because a lot of people say, well, just pray for your husband, but you don't do anything proactively to improve the relationship or to improve the communication. You just pray. And the thing is that then you might go 20, 30 years and nothing changes, or it could get worse, right? But it's
Mhm.
only because you have not taken any action along with your prayer, you know? So it all
But
depends on.
and the thing with that is, it's like that's with the mindset that you're praying to someone outside of yourself. That codependent thing that we're like God is out in the
Yeah.
in way up high in the sky, and he may or may not hear you. As opposed
Right.
to you have this spirit of the living God in you, and he can create through you, and you don't, when you pray, when you have your heart's desire to do something like what you're talking about, he can show you ways to put it into action, but if you don't put it into action, that means you don't really believe it.
That's true. Like you're not willing to take the risk to. Also, I believe that and this is something Polly B teaches is the verse God gives you the desires of your heart. Well, a lot of the time we interpret that into if I pray for something hard enough and I really want it, then God might give it to me. But really, what he says that means, and I believe this to be true because I've experienced it, is that when God gives me a desire in my heart, it's from Him. When I have a desire and it's strong, that's from God. Now,
Exactly.
yeah, and some religions you could say they'd say, oh, if you have any desire, even if it's like to be an artist, that's of yourself. But really, that is how God
Hmm.
expresses Himself through us is through our desires. And when we accomplish our desires, we magnify Him on the earth, right?
Right.
And yeah, because I grew up kind of like that in a church where they taught me, when your desires are really like of your flesh, and that when you pursue those desires, you're pursuing the flesh nature in you. And golly, I'm so glad I didn't. Honestly, I couldn't follow that because I knew in my heart that was not right. But then later, when I learned that my desires are from Him, and I can
Hmm.
pursue those desires because those desires are what makes me show Him to everyone in my life, and bless others and everything else. That changed everything for me, right?
Hmm.
So we sold the house for way more than we thought we were going to,
Yay.
and yes, it was amazing. And
That is God. You knew you were following the right you were hearing. You were following the steps
yes,
as laid out in Psalm 119. Is the Lord, your word is a lamp to my feet. What is that? You familiar with
That's
that?
it.
a light
Yep.
unto my path. Yeah,
Yeah. That's
lamp
what it
unto
made
my
me
feet
think
and a
of when
light
you're
unto my
saying
path.
that. Yeah. Well, go
And
ahead.
that's really what it was like because, going through, like I'm telling a story now, but going through it in real life, there was those days where I just had my toes lit up, and I
Yeah,
could
that's
only see
awesome.
right in front of me. And I will tell you, because I was thinking about this before the call tonight, what were the key things I wanted to make sure that I mentioned? Well, is that when I was struggling, there was a few different times during the sale of our house, and we almost did. The first buyer was had it under contract for a month and a half, and on the last day of the closing, she it fell through.
Mm.
Now that
Now,
can shake you a little bit. Right?
yeah, well, the thing is that there were some things that went on when we were dealing with her that I just in my spirit was like, I don't want to sell the house to this lady. I feel like
Protecting you.
we jumped the gun because we were scared. And I've had to really learn a lot about that because my husband's more like cautious, and he doesn't trust the Lord the same way I do at this point yet, right? He's learning.
Yeah.
It is a process. So I will he was afraid and worried, so he said, let's just do it, let's just sign with this lady. Well, then after I was like, so many things happened, I just thought, oh, I don't know about this lady. Well, then it was 2 days before the closing, and it had gone on past the date it was supposed to. And I just said to the Lord, I said, Lord, if she's not supposed to buy the house, then let it fall through on the last day.
Amen.
Really?
Yes. And
And
2 days
he answered your
later was the
I like
prayer.
doing
closing.
that with the Lord. I
Yeah,
love it
it
because
was
then you know
amazing.
that you know.
Exactly. And I didn't say anything to my husband about that because I was like, I'm not trying to like jinx it or whatever and say something to him or not or whatever. So I'm just not going to say anything. So 2 days later, the whole thing falls through. It was a Friday. And then it was funny. I'm standing there. So my realtor calls me that night. She says, well, uh, she wants you to give her another chance. And she really wants the house. And she had already put us through a lot with the drama. And I told Eric, I said, honey, I prayed 2 days ago for it to fall through. And she didn't, and she wasn't the right lady. And he said, well, okay, tell her no. Because we were thinking about it, even though everything we had been through. But the point is that it's trusting in the promises, trusting that God
Mhm.
has the best for us, right?
I
And that's
like
what I
the
kept
way
having to go back to.
yeah, I like the way your husband trusted you when
Yes.
you said what you told him about the way you prayed, and you just didn't want that lady to get it, and he went along with you.
Yes. And it
Wi
was,
at the
yeah,
risk of
it was
losing
good.
all of the whole deal, you know?
Yeah, and that's what happened. And so 2, 3 days later, we put the house back on the market, and a nice little sweet couple with two babies put a contract on it. And they were the most laid back, easy, no problem. And they closed in like 25 days. And
Wonderful.
so meantime, that whole time we bought our property down here, because my husband knew he just had this feeling that lady, I don't know, she's got some problems and we might not close with her. Like he was worried. And so he went ahead and because he was making enough money at his job, he could get a loan. So he got a loan for this property. Now we found this property down here, um, I want to say in April. And we bought it like the day it went on the market. We put a contract on it. And it's 8 acres and it's a double wide, but it's like kind of like a modular home basically, but it was like a brand new house and had barely been lived in. And so
Mm.
we shook on it, my husband and I told him, and this is another thing that Zane and Kelly have taught me was marriage, you need to have partnership in marriage. You need to have a lot of agreements. And so I was like, we made an agreement the day that we bought this house is I said, now from today on, anything regarding this house and anything we do with this property, we have to consult each other. And this is a partnership. And so we shook. And that actually has been really a great thing for our marriage and a training for us, right?
Yes, that's a wonderful idea to do that.
Yeah, it
Shake
was.
shake on it. That means a lot to a man.
Yes, it was like a deal,
A
right?
man with honor, a man who has an honorable man, a man with integrity.
Exactly. That keeps his word. And then
Yeah,
you can hold each other accountable to that promise you made, right?
yeah, absolutely.
So we moved within, we moved in before we closed on the other house and we closed on the other house. And then we what happened? I'm just trying to make sure I don't leave any points out. Okay. So 2 months later, and that was in May. 2 months later or a month later, my husband left his job. Now he
Mm.
drove up there and worked 4 days out of the week, and it's 2.5 hours. And he spent the night at his mother's house and everything to work for a month after we moved. And then in June, he he said, come pick me up. And I came and picked him up, and his branch manager, his store manager, dropped him off with his brand new truck he had to leave behind because that was the one thing he was going to miss the most was this real fancy truck he had earned. And he got in our little old Subaru, and he was the happiest he'd ever been in months and probably years.
Wonderful.
That's
Yeah, because
wonderful,
we were able to pay for our property and everything with cash
Mm.
and that's
out of the
unheard
Wonderful.
sale
of
of our
today,
house.
don't you think?
yeah, it's becoming a new movement where people are trying to get out of debt and buy land and just try to be able to have like a simpler way of life where you don't have a lot of bills, you
I'm
know?
for it. I'm totally for that.
Yeah, it's amazing. I will say because so he hasn't worked since then. So that was June and it's August of the next year. But what he's and I won't say he hasn't worked because he's been working his butt off is he's been building a homestead. So we had a lot of the land cleared and he built a barn and we've got
He built the
a
barn himself?
yeah, well we got a guy to build the barn and it's big. We have okay, so and he built our garden, which was a lot of work. I've done some videos on our garden. It took
What's
him
you have a
8 weeks
YouTube
to build
channel?
our garden.
Do you have a YouTube channel with that?
I don't yet, but I've thought about starting one. But I have a if anybody wants to look at our garden, it's called Riddleboro Farm, Riddleboro Farms.
Okay.
And it's um it and so I have a lot of my the stuff that we have sold and things like that and what we
I love
grow
seeing your
here.
flowers too. They're so beautiful.
Yes, and I've been loving that. So I will say basically, so now what we do is my husband has in the barn, he made a whole processing room to process pigs, wild pigs, um, and domestic, and then also deer. And then now we just process the pigs for ourselves, for our family. But if deer, he's going to start processing deer for some people, just family and friends, this year. But we actually, we only eat meat that we process ourselves. Like unless we go out to eat, that's it.
Yeah.
The only time we ever eat any other meat. And then
I
then
would
we
not
grew a
know where
huge
to begin.
garden.
That is fascinating to me.
Yes, it is. And well, here's what I will say is say the gardening we learned in the last really since that winter, November, is when I started learning. And I will say, it's been a good steady 2.5 years of learning. But in just 6 months, I learned enough to have a successful garden. So
That's
it really
amazing.
doesn't take, with the technology the way it is today, it doesn't take a lot to learn. And really, it's better to practice in where you live and to learn like at a pace, that but we can do a lot more than we think. I mean, it's amazing what you can accomplish um and it's very fulfilling, right?
It
It's very
is fulfilling.
gratifying.
I've shown you my little corner of a
Yeah,
a trial run at, "Can I grow something?" I mean, because
yeah,
it's hard for me to even keep a plant, green plant alive, much less something that produces food, and so
right.
I did get me 10 eggplants. I was real happy about that.
Well, that's pretty good because eggplant can be very challenging to grow, I will say. So, you don't know that until you experience it. But so people will just be like growing something and they're like, oh, I grew this thing. I'm like, that's hard to grow, but you didn't know that. So it's cool.
If you told me that before, I probably wouldn't have tried it.
Right, right. And it's very good when you make your own meal out of food that you made. So when people come to visit us, my husband loves having people like making people dinner. And we'll make them, something with the meat that we have. We have all these canned things like pickles and I make a little bit of fermented stuff we and then I make sourdough, so I do different sourdough things. And I mean, we have good food. We eat really good. Like, and the longer we're here, we don't eat out that much because everything's far. And so we saved a lot of money from that. But also it's better for our health because like we went to the beach, we only ate out like twice, maybe 3 times.
Mhm.
But when we did, we were like, man, so last night we cooked our own meal at the beach with the kids and it was so good because like we've learned how to cook all our food real that we love and enjoy them because we don't really go out to eat because it's so it's expensive and everything's expensive now, right?
Yeah, and you also don't really know what you're getting.
Exactly. You don't. You have really no idea like what the quality is. Well, and here's one thing I'll say is, and this is just like a plug for healthy food here, is that my son who's 17, or he just turned 18, Joseph,
Yeah,
he's grown up with us. He's homeschooled. He's grown up with us living the way we do and processing meat. He's a big hunter and all this. So the other day we were at Dollar General because that's really the only store like that's close. And he was getting like a frozen pizza or something, which I let them get like every few weeks, like, for one dinner. He
yeah.
he was looking at it. He said, "Mom, it says on here that it's made with bioengineered food ingredients."
Oh, gross.
And I was like, "What?" And we had never read that. And I said, "Are you kidding me right now? Like, what does that even mean? That must mean GMOs." So that's genetically modified organisms, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
So it's made in a lab. Okay, it's made in a lab. In other words, the food, there's some type of food in this that's made in a lab. Okay. Um,
That's
well,
scary, really.
he started looking, and pretty much every single thing that was processed in that store says that on it.
Mhm.
And I couldn't believe it. Like, I was like, okay, so this does explain a lot of the illnesses that people suffer with, and, inflammation, colitis, cancer, you could
Mhm.
name all of them. And that they don't know they're eating crackers, they're eating this with cereal, all the stuff that was in it, except for like dairy. But I don't know. I know that dairy in the store can have hormones in it, right? Like added
Yeah.
hormones that they give the animals. But the point is that um, if not, and I don't say all that to scare people. I just say that because we don't know what we don't know until you know it, and if you know it, you can do something about it,
Right. And
right?
even us and our we live in the city, and it's, we don't have a very big yard, but we have a raised bed that I bought at Sam's Club, and
Mm-hmm.
we had some old pots with that had plants in 'em or whatever. And we just put some dirt in there and gave it a try and planted some things. So, I mean, you could start small too, but I it is very self rewarding. I don't know if that's the way to put that, but it's very satisfying to
Yes.
plant something and then see it actually produce.
Yeah. It is, and so here's what I'll say: if you live in the city or the suburbs, then just go to the local farmers market, because I tell you what, those people that have vegetables and fruit at those farmers markets, not all of them are going to have like organic stuff, but the quality will be way better than any store you're going to get it from. And then you're supporting a local person financially, because it's the money that we spend with small businesses that really makes a difference in our community, not going to Walmart. And we all have to go to Walmart, we all have to buy from Amazon, but if you can buy locally from people, you're going to get a better quality. You're going to also get you're going to be paying for their kids' shoes or something,
Right.
instead
I'm
of
all for that.
just
I
yeah.
agree with you.
So we did sell at the farmers market, and then I also have grown this summer my first year of flower farming, because that's my passion. And oh my gosh, I love it, and it's so fun. Right now I got about 100+ sunflowers out there I got to go cut tomorrow morning, because I just got back from my trip and everything's blooming right now, and I'm kind of panicking about that. Because I got to find somebody to sell them to. But I sell to the local florists, and so it's just like a completely new lifestyle for us. And it's not all fun and games. This summer we had a very hot summer, and it was about a month and a half we were out there working in the yard at times, and I'd be like, "Oh no, this is too much for me." Sweating like crazy. But the rest of the year is wonderful. It's just wonderful. It's beautiful out there. So,
Well, I really appreciate you sharing about that. It's very interesting to me, and I still want to come and see it. I know you've done some Facebook
I
Lives
love
and things
that.
like that where
Yeah.
people, you try to show what you've got there. But I would like to come to where your husband has the opportunity to fix a meal for me.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Loretta, how
Now
about you? Would you like to ride up there with me?
Sure. Listen, where did you say you live, Hannah?
it's called Middle Georgia, so it's like near what they call Sandersville, but we're in between Macon, Augusta, and like Eatonton. It's like a triangle there, and we're right in the middle.
Okay, so all right, so you're in the Atlanta area.
Yeah, it's like 2 hours from Atlanta, but
Okay,
we're
Yeah, if
like
you wanna
okay.
call that in the area.
I want to say
Well,
east
wait a
of
minute.
Atlanta.
Is it to the east of Atlanta or to the
Yeah,
west?
it's
East?
east of Atlanta. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay, I got
so
you.
it's a little closer to Savannah than it is your part of town. But I doubt we're very far, honestly, from you because we're not that far from
Well,
Alabama.
I'm in Lower Alabama, so it's a few hours away, but not
Yeah,
bad.
yeah. So I mean, it's a lifestyle change, but I will tell you that it is taking off. Well, here's what I'll say. Okay, the last part is that this is kind of how I feel. Like the lifestyle we live today is work, 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 you know, to the point where you're just stressed all the time. And, it
Absolutely.
hasn't been like this that long. That's the thing. People don't realize this is like we're in a completely different age that ever has existed in all of time.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, 100 years ago, people were having to grow their own stuff and they were not working like they do today in the same capacity, right?
Yeah.
Especially being indoors all the time and all that. So,
So and
yeah,
we
they worked
become very
hard.
dependent on others for our
Yes.
food and stuff like that. And then you're talking about this, us being indoors so much, it's just come to my understanding about the need to walk on the ground on the earth, have our
Yes.
feet on the earth, and how
Yeah.
the way our society is now is very uncommon because like when I go to work, I'm
Yeah.
inside. When even my husband who works outside doing lawn business, his lawn care, he has his shoes on the whole time. So he's never his feet
Yep.
do not make contact with the ground, with our earth. And there's minerals and
Electron.
magnetism and all kinds of
Yeah.
things
Yep.
that we need to be connected to our earth, our
Yeah.
creation. It's like,
Remind me to send you a link to some shoes you can get for him. They're not cheap, but they actually they touch the ground through the shoe. The electrons come into your feet and then into your body. And they say that, they're grounding shoes, what they're called, but you
hmm,
can wear them. They're tennis shoes and stuff, You can wear them. One of my friends, she goes hiking every day and she always wears those when she goes out in the woods to hike or wherever she hikes, and she's big on that stuff. But the thing is that this is all stuff that's new, right? Like
yeah,
rubber on the bottom of your shoes. These are all things that are new in the last 80 to 100 years or whatever. And that's why it's important. You don't want to be left where you have no choices. You want to be able to choose what you want. And if, like, say something happened where you didn't have food or you didn't have water, well, then what would you do? That's why it's important to get educated and to learn how to be the authority in your life, not a victim, right? And
right.
just
Mhm.
a whole
And
another
be
teaching.
a creator.
Yes.
And
So,
as a man thinks, so is he. So
yeah,
you saw the possibilities and and with what you had learned, the spiritual points that you had learned, you applied that to make your life more productive and more satisfying.
yes.
It's a
And at
beautiful
this
testament.
point, we make enough money with me selling flowers. My husband processes deer to pay our bills, and and I have a little small business too. And but the thing is, neither of us will really ever have to work. Now it doesn't mean we're not going to work a traditional job ever, but we don't have to. And so at this point, he's 50 and pretty much he's retired.
That's amazing.
That's wonderful.
It's crazy. It's amazing is. And so that's the thing though, when you follow the leading of the Holy Spirit in you, and that whole thing about following your desires, pursue your desires because they are from God. And
Yeah.
when you do that, he leads you down paths that you could never create in your own mind. Like you may not have ever imagined it. I never would have imagined myself in the life we have today,
It's like a
right?
dream world, isn't it?
It's
Oh,
crazy.
It's like
It
I'm living
is.
a dream.
It took me a while to,
Absolutely, yeah.
yeah, to realize it was real.
you have an exciting testimony, Hannah.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
That's why
I'm
I wanted
sure
to
people
share it.
will love to follow you.
It's
Well,
inspiring. We need inspiration, right? It's like
we
you don't
sure
got to be a
do.
victim of your life. If you're not happy and you don't like it, then do something about it because and it might take a year, it might take 2, 3 years, but there's definitely hope and there's options. And with when you have the Lord and you live by the promises, you know He promised you abundance. He
Mm,
promised you blessing. And you keep reminding God of that because when you're doing that, you're reminding you of that.
That's
that's
exactly right. You
right.
are right,
Yeah.
'cause he already
Especially when
knows, but
things
when you
look
say it,
like they're
it's
not
like you're
going well.
it's like you're coming into synchronicity with the
Yes,
Lord when you speak out the truth of the desires of your heart, knowing they're in line with his will, and that's when things
absolutely.
flourish.
And I think that it's our act of faith is speaking out his truth and his promises when we're worried. And so, like, there's been so many times in my walk in the last 3 years where I've seen in front of me physically, this is not good. This is going wrong, or this is not the way I need it to be. And then I have to be reminded, and the Spirit always reminds me, okay, who do you believe? Do you believe what you
Hmm.
see? Or do you believe what I promised you? And do you believe
Hmm.
that I love you and that I want the best for you and that I want you to have blessings and I want you to have abundance and I want you to have a future and a hope for your children. And here's the, oh gosh, I just want to say one last thing is the thing is that also I read about this a while back. In Christianity, a lot of the time we're taught that, it's the end times, the Lord's coming back. So don't plan for the future and don't plan to leave a legacy for your children. And you know
Oh,
what? A few years ago, because that's how I grew up, was like, "Hey, God's coming back in 5 minutes. Like he could be here now, like in the next breath. And so you really don't need to plan for anything. Right. Well, then I think time started going by. They kept going by and they realized, well, maybe we should plan for a month or two from now or 5 years from now, and maybe it's good to have retirement. So I think that's where we are now. People do that, but why not plan to leave a legacy to your children? Why not plan to actually leave them something?
right, right.
Because people used to do that. And so that I never even thought about that until probably just 2 years ago. And I just started thinking about it, and my husband and I too. Why can't we just leave our kids some land? You know, like if you're gonna leave them something that's gonna help them, right?
There's a proverb about that, that a
Oh, I'd
wise
love to
man
hear that.
leaves an inheritance for his grandchildren even, is what I think what it is, but I'd have to look it up, but I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure.
my daughter is gonna have a baby, so I'm gonna have a grandchild
Yes,
in
and if you could
February.
leave
So
land to
I'm
your children and your children's children, that would be wonderful, and it
right.
would
Sure
be
would.
wise. I just believe that's wisdom speaking. Well, we need to
Absolutely.
pray for our listeners. How do y'all think we should be praying for our listeners tonight?
I would say pray for the leading of the Spirit, that they would trust the leading of the Spirit in them, and then also just pray for uh, freedom and that they would hear, that they would get to experience the desires of their heart, that they would
Yeah.
really get present to that.
Yeah, to have a understanding, we're talking out what we're thinking we should pray about, but actually kind of
Yeah.
speaking it over our listeners as we're talking,
Yes, we are.
but that they will come to an understanding that their thoughts come from the Lord.
Yes.
If they're in line with, growth in life, in abundance, in blessings, anything that's in alignment with that, that comes from the Lord.
If
Yeah.
there's
And they take
inspiration in
action
their heart,
and feel confident in taking
inspiration.
action on these thoughts that are given to you. Did you want to say anything else, Laura? I didn't mean to to interrupt you.
No, I was trying to interrupt you because I didn't get any words in.
Well, go ahead.
Say,
um,
say,
no, I was just saying that it's an inspiration in your heart, and you have a desire that's just, you can't let it go. Like Hannah was talking about, she just got so excited and inspired. And so I believe that has to be the inspiration of the Lord. That, I mean, it's Holy Spirit within you directing you. And so you can follow up and learn and then do.
Absolutely. We all
yes.
come in agreement with that. We're speaking life and your thought life and your actions to go hand in hand with di- the desires that
Mm,
the Father puts in your heart,
mm-hmm.
that's in your
Yeah.
mind, and that you feel confident and that you grow in that and that you excel and flourish in all that the Lord has for you.
Mm.
Blessings and much love to everyone. Our time
Mm.
is running out, but we want to thank you for joining us tonight. You can find us on our website at International Institute of Pneumatology.com / happy o'clock. And you can also find us on Facebook at Anointed Life. And we will see you next, or hear you, or you
Yes.
will hear us. I think I'll get this right in a minute. We'll be right here next Monday night, 9 p.m. Eastern Time. I'm looking forward to it. Our guest is, we have a very special guest who's going to come on and sing worship music,
Who is
Oh,
prophetic,
that?
prophetic worship music
Who
at
is that,
nice.
that.
Patty?
It's a surprise.
Oh,
But
okay.
make sure you come back to
Okay, I'll
find
come
out.
back.
It's a teaser. I do
Nice.
teasers, okay? All right.
Hannah, I'm
Much
so
love
glad
and
you came
blessings,
tonight.
ma'am.
Thank you.
I am so glad Hannah came tonight.
Yes, thank you, Hannah. I don't want to neglect saying thank you to you, especially on the air,
Yes.
because
Thank
it's
y'all
been a
for having me.
delight as usual.
Hmm.
And yes, thank you for saying something, Loretta. And I thank you too, Loretta, for being on tonight.
Thank
It's
you.
a wonderful thing that we have the opportunity to be on Happy O'Clock. I'm very thankful
Yes,
for it. And I
yes,
know the Lord
yes,
paved the way for this.
yes, he
So,
did.
yeah, so we speak blessings over all and shalom in your household.
And
Amen.
thank
Good
you. Thank
night
you.
and
Y'all have
blessings.
a great night.
You
Thank you.
too.
You